What's going on?
We had some technical difficulties right at the very moment, so
we're good.
Hey,
Sorry.
was delayed, so we apologize. But
we're here now. Yes,
we are here.
We're together.
And welcome for another Wednesday night with Refuel Live. We're happy that you're joining us. We see a lot of activity going on.
I love it.
News feed right now.
I can see it this week because Jordan had to blow it up so I could see it.
But I can see it now. Like an old lady. You know what I mean? Like I needed it. Like I had my glasses on, but I still was squinting. So thank you, Jordan, for that enlarged text. Because
it's like a large print Bible.
Exactly.
Yes, which I'm not too yet. I'm not that old.
Or I see my friends who already have to have their texts enlarged. So
like Brian Ball.
I just know it's coming.
Yeah, Brian Ball.
Oh, she just called you out, pal.
It's okay. He knows it.
That's awesome. Oh, do we have some birthdays this week?
We do have birthdays. We have 3 that we know of. So, if we miss you, we're really sorry.
And I think the first one's one of our leaders.
Yes.
Trish McCabe. Oh, my goodness. I love
birthday.
Trish. Yes, happy birthday. I hope those boys treat you right. I guess say men because, several of them are grown up.
True story.
On their own. So I hope they're treating you right and giving you love and that you deserve, Trish. And we also have
Evan Akers.
Evan Akers.
Happy birthday. And we have Gavin Howard.
Gavin Howard also having a birthday. So
yes.
That means that Julie had both kiddos are in May, right?
I think Emily's is in April.
It was April? Okay. I just remember hers was recent.
Yes.
So
I think so.
Okay. I apologize, Emily, that I said that incorrectly.
No, I could be wrong. I don't know. I think it was in April.
I think you're right, but my months and my days are all just kind of melding together, and I've lost track of time.
Yes. Yes. But we had a game. It was a meme
challenge.
The meme challenge, yes.
And we have some winners for that meme challenge.
I don't know what order they go in, but we have, hang on, let me flip my papers.
Yes.
Jude Burdick.
Jude Burdick, congratulations,
all the places you won't go instead of all the places you'll go. Yes. Yes, very good.
Awesome.
Oh, and then we have Josh Barnett. Is that
I think
correct? Almost. I've almost completed my 90-day trial of 2020. How do I cancel?
Oh,
I agree.
Amen, brother.
I agree.
Amen.
And then we have Marley Amos.
So coronavirus lockdown.
How introverts will think. How extroverts will be thinking. How the media
thinks it will be like the end of the world.
How it actually is. True story. Although I am finding toilet paper now, and I'm very excited about that. Yes.
Me too. And this is our final winner. This one came in kind of last minute, right?
Yes. McKaylee Chris. Yes. What are we all going to die from? Coronavirus.
What are the symptoms?
Fever and a cough. What should we buy?
All the toilet paper.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
Me neither.
Like, I don't know. Soap and toilet paper, like, people, what were you using before? Like, I really don't get it. But anyway, you guys are our winners.
Yes,
and
congratulations.
You will get an Amazon gift card. Yes, and we will be sending that out to you. So our little buddy Jordan back there will be in contact with you all about that.
Musgrave the intern.
Yes, we do love our Musgrave. Yes, he was a big car owner again. Whoop, whoop.
Ooh,
He got a Jeep. I'm very jealous because I've always wanted a Jeep since I turned 16, and I still haven't got one.
That was a big boy purchase for sure.
Yes. So we're very excited for him. Okay, I can get rid of that paper now. I don't want to end.
I know. I feel like our little snippet's short this week. I don't know if Matt's trying to tell us something. No, I'm just teasing.
Wait, we're kind of long-winded people. Yes. Oh, yes. Sorry, I was reading our chat. Yes, Michaela, you won. Yay, yes. I'm so excited. Evan says thank you. And it is in April.
It is in April. I was just trying to remember. My days are all flowing together.
But yes.
It was recent.
But let us know what is going on this week with you all. Okay, we have exciting news coming, which will be, the announcement at the end. Oh, that's one we almost forgot. I would have gotten in big trouble for that one. We have a video that is coming at the very end of the lesson tonight.
So
don't log
sign
off.
Yes, stay on.
Tell you what is happening in the next few weeks.
And how we're going to be relaunching Refuel. So we're super psyched about
I am excited because I might get to see some of you all faces in person. And our chairs won't be, these chairs will still be empty, but our parking lot and stuff will not be empty. So I'm very excited to see you guys.
We're looking forward to it.
Yes.
So I guess we're going to leave you with our
Corona University
bumper video. I'm trying to remember the title. Here you go.
See you guys. We love you.
In a few weeks, we'll all be graduates of Corona University. What have you learned? Tonight we're going to be talking about some of those milestones that we feel like we may have missed because of this quarantine. Things like prom, birthdays, graduation, Sweet 16. We're going to be talking about milestones and what God has taught us through this time. So whether you're graduating high school this year or not, all of us are going to be graduates of Corona University. What have you learned? Well, thank you so much for joining us. I think April and Kate already said this, but it's week number 10 of Refuel Live, meaning for the past 10 weeks, we have had youth group online. I've been looking at empty chairs. I've been staring into a camera. I'm not going to lie, it's getting a little old. The only thing that's keeping me going is watching your I'm literally living by your comments that I can see on the screen back here and seeing your beautiful faces on Zoom, and I'm beyond excited at just the thought that maybe here soon we might be able to, in some small ways, be able to see each other and get back together a little bit again. So make sure to stay to the end. We're going to be talking a little bit about our plans, at least for the start of the summer. But as you know, if you've been watching the past couple of weeks, we started this series called Corona University. Now, you may not be graduating this year from high school, or you may not be getting promoted from middle school to high school, or you may not be graduating this year, but something's going to happen in the next few weeks. As you know, they're starting to kind of relax some of the regulations in our area, and the mall opens up tomorrow. If you're excited about the mall opening up, let me know in the comments, all you people who love spending all your parents' money on things you really don't need. I promise you, April's going to probably be their opening day at the mall, just burning up that debit card. But the mall's opening up. McKaylee, I see that you're excited about the mall opening. So things are starting to open up. So that means we're all going to be graduating from Corona University. I believe that God, in this time where we were quarantined, is teaching us some things. And for the next couple weeks, we're going to be taking a moment to just focus on what has God taught us during this pandemic and during this quarantine. Last week, we talked about how God is using this quarantine time to teach us more about who we are and to teach us about our identity in Jesus. Tonight, we're going to be going to the 201 class of Corona University 201, and it teaches us something about milestones. One thing that's so special, when I think back about my years in middle school and high school, what's I think so special is that your years in middle school and high school are so full of milestones. You know what I mean by milestones? When you turn 13, you officially become a teenager, and that kind of feels like a milestone. When you get into middle school and you have your own locker, with the combination that you have to memorize, and you don't just have one teacher, you have several teachers, that's kind of a milestone. When you get promoted from 8th grade to 9th grade the next year, and you walk into the castle at Cabell Midland, or you go up to the hill on Huntington High, and you're in this ginormous school, it's a milestone. When you get your driver's license, that's a milestone. When you girls have your sweet 16 birthday, that's a milestone. And maybe the biggest milestone is when you finish your last day of high school, and you're done with high school forever, and you graduate, and that's kind of considered a milestone where you go from being a teenager to a young adult. So your years are full of milestones, but the problem that we see during this quarantine is it's hard to celebrate these milestones because you're stuck at home. So some of you turned 16 and you weren't able to have a big, sweet 16 birthday celebration. Some of you are graduating high school this year, and you imagine what it would be like to walk across that stage, and it may happen in June, it might not even happen. And you almost feel like those experiences, some of you got your license right before the pandemic started, and now there's nowhere to drive because you have to stay at home. It's almost like you feel like some of those milestones have been stolen or taken away from you. But what we're going to learn tonight by looking at a really interesting story in Joshua 4, we're going to be looking at this, that milestones are only as important as the journey that they represent. So we can learn, and I think we can be encouraged in knowing that even though some of the milestones that we look forward to have, in a way, been taken away from us, that what they represent still stands. So if you have your Bible, turn to Joshua chapter 4. I've got my Bible open here to Joshua chapter 4. And before we read the verses, I'll put them up here on this TV too. But before we read the verses, I kind of want to set up what's going on in this situation. Maybe you've heard in Sunday school or at church, you've heard the story of the nation of Israel and how they began with a man named Abraham that God gave a promise to and a covenant to. And that man, Abraham, he literally fathered a nation. He had a son who had two sons who had, and on. They became this great nation. They moved to Egypt, but then the people of Egypt, the king, the Pharaoh of Egypt, enslaved those people. They got bigger and bigger as far as number goes as a nation. God intervened and through a bunch of miracles freed his people, these Israelites, from slavery. They left Egypt to go back to a land that God promised that they could live in. And Moses, maybe you heard of him, right? You part the Red Sea guy. Moses led them out of Egypt toward that land. God did a lot of really incredible things. He parted a sea so they could walk through it. He led them with fire and with clouds. He provided literally food from heaven, manna from heaven that, from what I'm told, tastes a lot like the Chick-fil-A chicken minis you get for breakfast. God did all these incredible things, and then one day Moses died, and they're like, well, who's going to lead us now? And God brought Joshua up as the leader. These people of Israel went right up to this river that was called the Jordan River. And on the other side of that Jordan River was the land that God had promised to those people of Israel. And there were two problems. Well, first, it's a big river. You know, anybody ever tried to swim across the Ohio River? Let me know in the comments. I won't say that I have, and I won't say that I haven't, because that'd be a bad example to set. But it's not easy to swim across one of these long rivers. So they have to get all these people across this river, and then when they get to the other side of the river, there are people living in the land that God promised that do not want them in there. So they have some challenges, and God meets with Joshua early in the morning at the beginning of Joshua chapter 4, and he tells Joshua this. Here's what I'm going to do today. Imagine God telling you this. You're like, whoa. Here's what I'm going to do today. I want you to take the Ark of the Covenant into the Jordan River, and when that happens, the Jordan River is going to dry up miraculously so you and your people can pass through it. And when you do that, I want you to do one thing. I want you to grab 12 big stones from the bottom of the river and set them on the riverbank so that you'll never forget what I did. And Joshua, being a good follower of God, obedient follower of God, says, well, God, you've brought us this far. Well, we're going to do it. So the people of Israel, they get up that morning. They get the Ark of the Covenant. The priests, the people who are carrying the Ark of the Covenant, they dip their feet into the water, and then all of a sudden, the river dries up. God kind of dams the river up on one side, and all the people of Israel can pass through. Those 12 men from the 12 tribes of Israel, they take rocks from the riverbed that nobody could ever get to when there was water in it, and they set it on the riverbank as like a memorial or a milestone to represent what God did in their nation so they would never forget it. So I want to look and I want to read a couple verses here. You can see it on this screen here. I'm just going to read it from my Bible. But we're going to read starting in verse 4, and we're going to go to verse 7. And it describes kind of in a really short way what Joshua told them to do before they went across. Verse 5, Joshua said to them, pass on before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan. Take up each of you a stone upon his shoulder, talking to those 12 men, according to the number of the tribes that's of the people of Israel, that this may be a sign among you when your children ask in the time to come, what do these stones mean to you? Then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of look at three different things in this section of Scripture. And what I like to do is I like to be able to mark it up. So I'm just going to draw a little smiley face to show you. I like to be able to show you how you can study the Bible and mark it up. So we're going to be kind of looking at that together as we study. And the first thing that I want you to look at is I want you to look at this phrase here. I'll zoom in so you can see it. I want you to look at this phrase here, the Ark of the Lord. The Ark of the Lord was also called the Ark of the Covenant. And if you're here for the first time, you'll realize my handwriting is atrocious. I should have been a doctor, but just deal with it, okay? The Ark of the Covenant. And what's so interesting about this is it's mentioned 17 times in chapter number 4. So this is a big deal, right? So what's such a big deal about this Ark of the Covenant that's so important that it needs to be mentioned 17 times? Well, the Ark of the Covenant was a big deal to these people of Israel who were traveling to this land. And we can learn in Exodus chapter 25, the way that the ark was constructed. It was constructed out of pure gold. It had two cherubim, two big angelic creatures formed on each side of it, and at the top of it was this seat called the mercy seat, where the high priest in Israel would sprinkle the blood of the sacrifice to pay for the sins of the entire nation once a year. So this was a big deal. That's what it looked like. In the book of Hebrews, we learn what was inside it. And what was inside this ark was the Ten Commandments, the law that God gave the people of Israel. There was the staff that Aaron used that budded. It was a representation of that miracle. Manna that fell from heaven, they put in there. So this ark was a representation of God's presence with the people of Israel and his promise to the people of Israel. We don't have the time tonight, but God had at this point made two promises to Israel. He made a promise to Abraham. It's called the Abrahamic covenant in Genesis chapter 12, that God would use Abraham to make a great nation, and that God would use this nation to bless everybody in the earth. Later, through Moses, Mount Sinai, 10 Commandments, God made what's called the Mosaic covenant. And he said, if you follow my law, I will bless you. If you don't follow my law, nation of Israel, I'll curse you. So as they were taking that Ark of the Covenant across the waters, literally the promise and the presence of God was walking with them. So that brings us kind of to our first point, is that milestones are reminders of God's faithfulness. Even though Israel, they faced an impossible task. They had to get 2 million people across a river that was 350 feet wide. How are they going to do that? God's promises and his power and his presence went with them. That reminds us of something as we think about it, because God didn't make the covenant with Abraham for us. He didn't make the covenant with Moses for us. But Jesus on the cross, the Bible says, made a new covenant with me and with you, and we're part of that covenant. And here's what we learn about this new covenant. In Luke chapter 22, we learn that Jesus is the mediator of this covenant. It's based on his death on the cross. Hebrews chapter 8, verse 6 says that this covenant that God made, this new covenant that Jesus made with us, is better than the covenant that God made with Moses and the people of Israel. Why is it better? Because it allows us to know and do God's will. It gives us the promise of a privileged relationship with God. It allows us to know God directly. It allows us to have our sins forgiven. So don't get lost in the weeds here. Milestones are a reminder of God's faithfulness. Just like God didn't give up on his promises to Israel during this time of quarantine, and even before that, God hasn't given up on his promises to you. You're a senior and you're really bummed that you didn't get the graduation ceremony you wanted. The ceremony was a milestone, but that milestone pointed back to all of the times in your life that God made good on his promises, that God forgave your sins, and that God's presence went with you, and his power went with you to get you up to this point now where you'd be at this milestone. So remember that even though maybe you don't get to celebrate the milestone in the way that you want to, milestones remind us of God's faithfulness. Took a little while to set that point up. So before we get to the next point, there's somebody keeps trying to hack into our live stream, and I can't quite figure out what's going on. Jordan, can you figure this out?
I'm in. What's going on in Refuel? I'm Austin, and I am hacking into the Instagram account tomorrow for a couple of hours, if they can stop me, that is. Send me any questions you have, and I'll be happy to answer them before they change the password on me. Peace.
Okay, are we fixed? I think we got everything back on. But seriously, Austin's going to be hosting tomorrow on Instagram. So make sure to ask him some questions. Austin's kind of one of those men of many different talents and interests. So whatever you ask him, I'm sure he knows something. He's one of those people that just know a little bit about everything. So make sure to give Austin a shout out tomorrow. So the next thing that we learn and that we're looking through here is just the miracle that happened. I want you to look at this, okay? That God, they went into the midst of the Jordan River. What's such a big deal about the Jordan River? Well, here's what we learned. That the Jordan River, I need to zoom in here, don't I? The Jordan River, there were two ways there were I guess you could almost say two settings for the Jordan River. There was the normal Jordan River. That was about 150 feet wide. And then once a year, the Jordan River would flood, and it would get to flood stage, which was over 350 feet wide. And here's what we know. If we look at verse 15 of chapter 3, it says that the Jordan overflowed all its banks at the time of harvest. So during this time, the Jordan River was at flood stage. It was the widest that it usually would ever be. So some skeptics try to say, well, maybe it was that the Jordan River had just dried up at that point. It was easy for the people of Israel to get across. No, the Bible specifically says that it was at flood stage. It was 350 feet wide. To make it more difficult, there were 2 million people estimated in this nation of Israel. So 2 million people had to get across a 350-foot wide river that was about 12 to 15 feet deep. And you didn't just have like able-bodied men and women. You didn't just have a bunch of Michael Phelps that could just get across that river 350 feet. You had old ladies. You had boomers that couldn't swim across the river. You had chariots and you had horses. You had kids and you had infants. There was, all that to say, there was no way that these people were going to get across the Jordan River without God's help. And here's what we learn is that God, I got to say this right, God dammed up the river 18 miles back. So 18 miles back in the city is called Adam. And what many scholars believe is that if the river was dammed up 18 miles back, that would have given like about a mile wide area for those 2 million people to get across in about a half a day. So God, miraculously, it says, He just made the river, instead of flowing this way, it just started flowing straight up. And He stopped the river. And here's something else that's interesting. We learn that the river wasn't just stopped, that the riverbed was dry. Can you imagine trying to walk across? You know how sometimes you get your feet stuck in the mud and you pull your leg up and your shoe's still in the mud? It wasn't like that. It was dry ground that they walked across. So all that to say, I'm running out of space, aren't I? All that to say that this was a miracle. This cannot, I'm a Bill Nye the Science guy. I love science, but you cannot explain away what happened here outside of it just being a daggone miracle. God intervened into this situation. Why is that so important? Well, I think that brings us to our next point, is that every generation needs a new milestone. Every generation needs to see God move. This generation was the next generation. Their parents remembered what it was like in Egypt when God sent the 10 plagues to liberate them. Their parents remembered crossing the Red Sea. Their parents remembered when Moses spoke to a rock and the rock provided water. This new generation, they had only heard stories about that. But then they got to see God work in their generation for them. Yeah. I'm going to show my age here. I remember where I was when terrorists flew planes into the World Trade Center on 9/11, September 11th, 2001. You don't. That's something that my generation remembers distinctly. And you can ask anybody my age, we know exactly where we were when that happens. Your generation has a new 9/11. Your generation is the one who had this coronavirus come and totally mess up all the milestones in your life. But what if God is going to use this as a way to demonstrate His power to your generation? What's really incredible is that this generation, this is exactly, going back to this is exactly what this generation needed, because it didn't get easier after they crossed the Jordan. There were many, many battles to fight, and God would continue to do miracle after miracle after miracle for these people. But this was the Kickstarter. And I think maybe for us, especially you, this is the first time you've seen God get you through something. You've seen God get you through this virus and provide you hope and provide you people that encouraged you and really spoke to you during this time. Don't forget it. And that brings us kind of to our final point, and what we kind of started at the beginning, is that milestones are only as important as the journey they represent. Let's kind of go back to our section here. We're going to mark up a little more here. Look what it says. It says, it talks about these stones. I got to switch my pen here. It says that this may be a sign among you. And then he says, when your children come to ask in time to come, what do these stones mean to you? He says, then you'll tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off, so that these stones shall be to all the people a memorial forever. Here's what happened. Those 12 men, they took stones from the bottom of the river, and they placed them on the riverbank, and they piled them up to make a memorial. That was something that was done. That was done during those times. Is that people would take stones and they would make a memorial when something happened. But they never got stones from a riverbank like that, or from the bottom of a riverbed like that. And they piled those stones up so that not only would they remember, but their children would remember. And they piled those up in a place on the other side of the river called Gilgal. You read about that in the rest of the passage. And Gilgal would become like their operations center, where they would plan their military maneuvers to take the land that God gave them. So think about this. God worked in a big way. He stopped the river, got them across, and then at Gilgal, every time they were getting ready to go on their next conquest, and maybe the enemy looked kind of scary, they planned their conquest right next to these stones that reminded them that, hey, if God can stop the river, He can protect us as we go forward to do His work. And these milestones that either we're celebrating or the milestone of getting through this coronavirus is something that we will remember when we face our next challenge. Here's something that's interesting, though, is that these stones, it says, shall be a memorial to the people forever. But here's the problem. You can go to the banks of the Jordan River in Israel today, and the stones aren't there. Somebody moved them. But here's what I know. I can still read about the stones in Joshua chapter 4, because even though the milestone was removed, the story lived on forever. And yeah, for some of you, I wish I could say I feel your pain, but I don't know what it's like to have a graduation taken away. I don't know what it's like to have those firsts, those celebrations be ripped away from me. But what I want to encourage you with is this, that even though those milestones look different than you imagined, the thing that God did in your life, the journey He brought you through, is what's going to last forever. That story that you have in your heart that you can tell other people is what's going to make all the difference. So for those of you that have lost some milestones, all I can say is I'm sorry. But I do want to leave you with that encouragement. I know we're getting antsy. I know we're really ready for this thing to be over, and we may have another week or two. We may have to wait it out a little longer. But I just want you to know that even though you may not be able to celebrate the way that you want to celebrate, God is still working in your life, and you will be able to look back at this time and say, God was with me just like He was with these people in the nation of Israel. We're going to end with a song, and then I'm going to be back to set up that announcement about some things we have coming up. But while this song plays, I want to encourage you if you have a prayer request, if there's a way that we as youth leaders can pray for you, I want to encourage you to text your prayer request to this number, 304-208-8044. It'll go directly to my phone, and I'll share it with the youth leaders, and we'll continue to pray. It's one of the things that we have really counted as a privilege to do during this time is to pray for you. So we're going to roll this. We're going to roll this song. Please, maybe take this time to pray to God. And tell God, thank you for walking with me through this time. Thank you for everything you've done in my life leading up to this moment. If you have a prayer request, send it into us during this song.
Remember
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And before we transition to groups, and we're going to transition to groups. And by the way, before I cue this next video, the way to get to our groups, I've got my phone here, is that you close the chat and you do the little drop-down box, and it has a link here. It says Access Groups here. You click that link, and you can choose high school group or middle school group based on your age. Now, so after this video plays, we're going to open up those Zooms to where you can get in the group. But we are pretty excited that in the next few weeks, we're going to be able to do a few small gatherings for teenagers for Refuel here. So I really want to ask you to watch this video and listen to this video because it's going to tell you exactly how you can be involved in the summer. We're hoping that by the end of the summer, we can be back at it, but we're just going to have to see. So watch this video. I was excited when I made this video and put it together. I'm excited to be back with you, and I hope we can see each other really soon. So watch this video, and then I'll see you on Zoom.
Well, this park has been empty for the past 10 weeks, and I know you've missed gathering together, and I've missed you guys so much. I know we've been connecting digitally, but every time I walk through and I see these empty classrooms and I see the empty park, I think about you guys, I miss you, and I pray for you. But I've got some good news now. We have, as a church and youth leaders and from some input from your parents, have put together a plan where we can slowly start meeting together as a youth group here soon, and I'm very excited about that. I want to let you know how that's going to happen. Now, we're going to start small. We have what's called Phase 1. The good news is it starts the first week of June, and we're going to offer 2 Bible studies, one for high schoolers, one for middle schoolers, on 2 different days of the week, and we're going to meet outside. So we're asking you to bring your Bible and to bring a lawn chair, and we'll have enough space where we can be spaced out and stay in keeping with the guidelines, but we can meet together and study the Bible together. And next week, we're going to be telling you the dates and the times for those Bible studies and how you can register online for those Bible studies. We're going to do that for a little while and get some more input from your parents and from our leadership and the government regulations, and hopefully we'll be able to move to Phase 2 later, which will mean getting together on the church parking lot and having youth group on the parking lot every other Wednesday. And if that goes well, later in the summer, we're going to start to be able to meet every Wednesday again. But we're just going to have to see how it goes. But I want you to know that the first week of June, we're going to be offering those 2 Bible studies, one for high school, one for middle school, where we'll be able to be together in person, appropriately distanced, and to be able to study the Bible together. I can't wait to see you, and I hope you can join us. Now, here's where I really need your help. I'm asking you to keep an open mind as we're trying to start things back up. We may have to do, temporarily, things a little different than we used to because of everything that's going on. Please know that we're doing this to protect you and to make sure that we can continue to meet with these new regulations. The second thing I want to ask you to do is to understand and honor your parents during this time. Your parents may have some apprehension about you starting to come right away, and that's okay. Your parents are looking out for your safety, and I want you to honor their requests and know that when you're ready to come back, we're ready for you. Now, be checking our Instagram, be checking YouTube, and we'll be releasing some information about these Bible studies in the coming days.